Random House Audio presents The Revolution Was Televised, The Cops, Crooks, Slingers, and Slayers Who Changed TV Drama Forever by Alan Sepinwall. Read for you by Joe Ochman. Introduction. And they pay you for this? Once upon a time, any conversation I had with a stranger about my job as a television critic led to that question. Some were amused that this was the way I made my living. Others were disdainful, insisting that they didn't watch much television, or even own a TV. More often than not, the conversation would hit a dead end when I said that I didn't also write about movies. But if my job didn't make sense to these strangers, it made perfect sense to me. I had stumbled onto the best gig in the world. I was being paid to watch television. I was, of course, also being paid to write about television, which not everyone could do. And there were times where it wasn't so much that I got to watch television for a living, but that I had to watch it. Where have you gone, homeboys from outer space? But overall, it was a dream come true. It was a dream I had fallen into by continually being in the right place at the right time for someone with my interests. I matriculated at the University of Pennsylvania with the first class of non-engineers to receive an email address and a Unix shell account, and I began using both to write obsessively about NYPD Blue, first on Usenet, then on a website I set up on the campus server, where it still sits, a monument to cutting-edge web design circa 1994. Online reviews of anything were still a novelty when I graduated in '96, and that website helped me land a features internship at the Star-Ledger of Northern New Jersey, my hometown newspaper, in a summer when the paper's longtime TV critic couldn't make it to the TV Critics press tour in L.A. My editors gambled on sending me in his place. I didn't embarrass myself, and they offered me a full-time job as the backup TV writer. In college, I'd been told I would be extraordinarily fortunate to land a full-time job as an entertainment critic at a small paper within 5 years. I'd lucked into one at a big paper within 5 weeks. Even better, it seemed like the best time in entertainment history to be a television critic. From where I sat, TV was in the middle of another golden age, filled with smart comedies and, more importantly, dramas like NYPD Blue and Homicide that I felt tapped into what I had seen for years as the limitless potential of TV storytelling. I loved movies, but I'd also seen in shows like Hill Street Blues and St. Elsewhere that the small screen had certain advantages over its bigger, more prestigious cousin. It could tell very long stories. It could allow characters to grow over extended periods of time. And by coming into my home rather than making me go to it, it could forge a more intimate bond with me. As I grew up, very few shows were willing or able to exploit those advantages to the fullest. But by the time I arrived at the Star-Ledger, more and more were figuring it out. I said to myself often, privileged to be covering a medium that had become as good as I had always dreamed it would be, that was, possibly, as good as it could ever possibly be. I was wrong. I thought I had seen the TV universe at its most vast and impressive. Instead, I was about to witness a big bang of sorts, one that would greatly expand the boundaries of this universe and the way we viewed it. I was about to see The Sopranos. I was about to see Oz, The Wire, Deadwood, The Shield, Lost, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, 24, Battlestar Galactica, Friday Night Lights, Mad Men, Breaking Bad. I was about to see television achieve its full potential and step out from the shadow of the cinema. I was about to see a revolution. And the revolution began not just with the talented creators of these shows. Television had, after all, been no stranger to creative geniuses, going back to Rod Serling and Patty Chayefsky, but with dynamic shifts in the television business itself, and in the many ways people watched TV. When I started at the Ledger in the summer of 1996, you had the broadcast networks, and then you had everyone else. And within the network universe, Fox had only begun to be treated as anything but a novelty. The WB and UPN were runts fighting over table scraps. HBO had a few original comedy series and its movies, but if you wanted scripted television, you mostly went to ABC, CBS, NBC, and occasionally Fox. A few years before, Bruce Springsteen had put out a song called 57 Channels and Nothing On, whose title became almost instantly dated on both ends. Soon, everyone's cable package was ballooning way past 57, and channels that had been satisfied airing nothing but reruns and old movies began putting on their own original programming, and the mass audience that had been the bread and butter of television began to fracture into a group of ever smaller niches. Commercially, this presented a huge problem for a business built on a big tent philosophy, where you succeeded with the broadest, most palatable, least challenging work. Creatively, though, the fragmented audience was the best thing that could have happened to television. Certainly, some corners of the TV business leaned heavily on programming that was as broad and/or cheap as possible. The year after The Sopranos, Survivor set off the reality TV boom. But many smart executives realized that they could do very well making shows those smaller audiences would care passionately about. You can make money on a show watched by 3 million people, if they're the right 3 million people, paying close attention. Many of these shows came from veteran producers still stinging from mistakes made in past projects. Often, these modern masterpieces were first written under the assumption that no one would ever see them. That combination of regret and abandon led to a wave of bold and exciting new dramas the likes of which TV had never seen before. And as The Sopranos was followed by The Wire, The Shield, and all the rest, an interesting role reversal happened with the movie business, which was dealing with some audience uncertainty of its own. Where once there had been blockbusters, art films, and a large swath of movies in between, many of that last group geared to adults, the 21st century slowly saw the extinction of the middle-class movie. If a film couldn't either be made on the cheap or guarantee an opening weekend of $50 million or more, it was out. As Sopranos creator David Chase, who once upon a time wanted nothing more than to get out of the TV business and write films, puts it, movies went from something really interesting to what we have now. TV stepped in to fill that void. If you wanted thoughtful drama for adults, you didn't go to the multiplex. You went to your living room couch. The rise of this movement came at the perfect technological time, as DVRs, on-demand, and especially DVD box sets and video streaming made it easy for people to catch up on that great but complicated new show they'd heard so much about. DVDs allowed fans to turn their friends onto new discoveries the way rock fans used to pass around albums from their favorite up-and-coming new band. And the spread of the Internet into every corner of modern life made it easier to discuss and make sense of shows that might have seemed too challenging back in the day, whether you were trying to solve the mysteries of the lost or understand what Tony Soprano's dreams meant. Once upon a time, people seemed impressed when they heard what I did, first at the Ledger, later at hitfix.com, only because it seemed like an easy gig. After a while, though, when I would tell them that I was a TV critic, they would get this glint in their eyes, leaning in to tell me how much they loved Omar on The Wire, or talk about how Friday Night Lights always made them cry. We'd been going home with television every night for years, but suddenly we had reason to respect it in the morning. This book is the story of that transformation in both the medium and how we saw it, through the prism of the best and/or most important shows of the era. I'll talk about why these shows were great and the role they played in a larger story. I'll also let the creators, executives, and actors responsible for that greatness explain how these shows came to be. It was a unique time, and there was a new generation taking over in television, says Deadwood creator David Milch. And television, in its own way, the best of it was as good as anything. Prologue. Let's be careful out there. The shows that paved the way. There's already a school of thought, one that a book like this admittedly plays into, arguing that true quality television didn't exist before The Sopranos. But while the adventures of Tony Soprano and the many complicated characters who followed him elevated TV to another level of both quality and cultural respect, they didn't come out of thin air. The millennial wave of revolutionary dramas was built on the work put in by a group of other series, particularly the ones created from the early 80s onward. And even there, I would accept the argument from older TV historians that I'm leaving out significant, even earlier work. David Chase learned his craft writing for The Rockford Files, for instance, even if The Sopranos has only a passing resemblance to it, and there were many important dramas in the 50s and 60s. But from my point of view, there's a more tangible connection between, say, Hill Street Blues and The Wire than between The Defenders and Breaking Bad. Here are some of the crucial building.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?